Hey, see, I got my Tron suit on.
Good.
So I wanted to do a couple of things. When I was in Master Zhang's class, sometimes he would start us on learning a form like the saber form or any of the forms, and we get about halfway through, and he'd go, "Okay, that's enough of that. Let's go on to something else." And we'd all go, "Yeah, but we want to learn the whole form," and he wouldn't come back to it for maybe 2 or 3 years. Which is an easy way of saying I'm thinking about dropping the 83 form for right now. And I'll tell you why. Just learning more forms doesn't really mean that much. There are endless forms, guys. It goes on, as far as I know, it goes on forever. Um, just learning more forms is like learning more dance steps, but the problem is the dance steps you don't do that well. So it's not about extending yourself further and further. It's about developing a route, developing yourself so that what you do is really good. Then, when you decide to go on, I'm not saying we're going to drop the 83 completely. We're not going to, and we'll add the 71 in there too, etc. We'll do all that. But if, for instance, you have the 24, the beginning form, down well, then when you go on to the 83 and the 71, those will also be well. They won't be as well, but gradually over time they will be. So I want to do two things today. Now that Rand's here, we can go ahead, right? So I want to do two things today. One, I want to talk about what it means to do a form as a whole, what it means to you, what it should mean to you when you do it as a whole. And then I want to go back into the 24 and talk about the 10 parts of one of the moves as a kind of illustration of what I'm talking about. Okay, when you do even though you're just practicing, every time you practice is going to be different from every other time you practice. You feel a certain way, the day is a certain way, your body's a certain way. You gotta, as the fishermen say, you gotta match the hatch. You have to go with the flow about what's happening that day. But in general, when you perform any form, it's not a bad idea to think to yourself, I'm doing this publicly. I'm performing. There's an audience. If you were in China, you might be in the middle of a restaurant because that's where they do it. All right? You and your compatriots are there for a banquet and they ask you to get up and do a form. And you do. You can't say no. It's an insult to all those people to say no. You get up and you do the best you can. How do you do that? How do you deal with your own nerves? How do you deal with the structure of the form as a whole? So I want you to think about this. I think we watched. Didn't we watch? Um, I think Susan may not have. We watched. Kevin, what's his name?
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Very wrong.
Stevie Ray Vaughan yesterday. When you watch that, that's a long piece. It's 9.5 minutes. It's very similar in length to the 24, to the beginning form. Not quite the same, but close. The first time you listen to him, it just seems like he just goes on and on and on, and it goes from one thing to another. You gotta watch it half a dozen times before you realize, oh, there's in all this improvisation, it's built on a structure. This, all those improvisations are actually variations on a theme. Variations on a theme by Paganini, right? Only it's variations on a theme by Stevie Ray. Some of those variations go way out there into outer space. Some of them are very close to home, but they're all actually the same thing. If you listen to the, well, how many variations in Paganini are there? 23? I don't remember.
At least.
Some of them go way out there. There's like, you can't even tell it's the same theme. Unless you're a musician. I almost said unless you're a magician. Maybe a little bit of a magician and a little bit of a musician.
That too.
And then so you're going, oh, okay. So actually, this is simpler than it looks. There's a structure here that the performer can use as a diving board. Yes, there's improvisation, but the improvisation is built on a certain structure, and the performer can use that. So what is the structure? Think back to Stevie Ray. By the way, if you haven't, I'll send everybody that link to Stevie Ray, because he's a perfect example. First of all, the first thing he does is an introduction. And the introduction is, well, for Stevie Ray, it's actually pretty long, right? I'm not enough of a musician to understand, to know the words for that structure, but there's clearly two parts to the introduction. And it's quite long. It's, 2-3 minutes long. The first one is relatively gentle. He's kind of just putting the theme out there. The second one, he puts a little fire in there, but it's not too crazy. Then he does the 2 verses of the vocal. There's only 3 verses in the whole 9.5 minutes. There's 3 short verses, 2 at the beginning and 1 at the end, at the very end. And then he goes through variations. So there's introduction, there's vocals, there's variations, and then there's the big climax, right? Where he plays the guitar behind his back, sings the final verse, and it's over. There's a structure there. That's the basic structure. But if you look at the structure, kind of like if we could cross-section the structure, he's using a classic fence post structure. There's a fence post, and then there's the fill, and then there's another fence post, and then there's the fill, and then there's another fence post, and there's a fill, right? So what are the fence posts? Well, we think of them as the high points, right? So, one of the high points is the first big fence post is when he does the vocals, right? And then if you go through the thing, you can see the fence posts he puts up. And the last fence post is the last vocal on there. That structure, it's just like a fence on a farm. That is a classic musical structure. It's also classic for literature, right? Where they bring you up to a place and then they kind of quiet down and go through, and they bring you up to another place and they quiet down, and then they bring you up to another place. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is written exactly like that. Every chapter ends on a cliffhanger, right? There's a quiet, and then you have to go to the next chapter, and so and then the next chapter. It's mesmerizing. So, how do you incorporate that in like the 24? Now, I was talking about, you do this for the sake of an audience, and yes, that's true, you do, okay? but you also do it for your own sake. It's like telling yourself a story. A lot of classic epic poetry is also written that way, right? So you think of the 24, it's not just a mass of half digested, half understood stuff, right? It's a story. So the very beginning of the form, what should it be? Well, it should be the introduction. The first move of the form is the introduction to the form. So you are setting out the theme, and it's relatively quiet. Master Zhang used to say, if you could truly understand what was going on in the first move, you would understand everything about Tai Chi. And he was not kidding. That's where you set the theme. Right? It's nonverbal, but so is Stevie Ray Vaughan for the most part, right? So here's the first move, the classic first move. Right? That's it. Now, in our style of Tai Chi, we expand on that a little bit. That's it. Now I've moved the goalposts a little forward into the second move for different pedagogical reasons. But that's the first move. So you think to yourself, if I'm going to do that for people, that's the introduction. Should it be fast and noisy? No. It should be relatively quiet and relatively gentle. It's easy. All right? Not too easy, but it's pretty easy. So in fact, for me, the first two moves are the introduction, all the way up to Buddha's warrior. Once you've tapped the ground, okay, now you're into a different place. All right? Maybe you're into the vocals now. It's much more expansive. And then you go forward, you've got the whole form, and then a little razzmatazz at the end, right? But when you practice the form over and over and over, start structuring it. Start looking at it from that point of view. Well, how do I structure this? I mean, the 24 only has 24 moves. The short form. There are even shorter forms. You could take the way to do it is, for instance, to take the first section of the form, the first 6 moves, and think of that as a form in and of itself. All right? So I'll tell you what, let's do that today. Let's take the first 6 moves, and you think about this. It's a poem. It's a short story. All right? It's a novelette. And try to structure this in a way that makes sense to you inside. So let's do it from the beginning. So when Stevie Ray was doing all those variations, I'll tell you what he was basically doing, even though I'm not a musician. So we just did the form once. That was a performance. I thought certain things when I was doing it. I emphasized certain things. Some consciously, some probably unconsciously. Now, if I did it again, it wouldn't be the same. It'd be because I would literally think different things. And I might go, that was that last time when I did that, that was interesting. But what if I did it even more? Or what if I did it less? Or what if I turned more to the left? Or what if I shifted my weight in a different way? Suddenly there's a variation. That's what all those variations are. He was just practicing. He was remembering, he was remembering certain things from his practices. I watched a reaction to this by a guy who was a little. I thought he was not quite getting what was going on, but he was going. Well, now is he playing a score or is he improvising? I said, no, it's not a score. Of course it's improvisation, but it's not just pulled out of the blue. It's based on years of practice. So is he just going from thing to thing just improvisationally? Yes, but the things that he's going, he's done them before, of course. And is he doing some things that are absolutely new? No doubt, because he's doing it the same way he practices it. So now if we do this again, it's going to be different, which is why it's a good idea to practice each section of the form as a form itself and do it half a dozen times in a row. You're not actually going to get to your own real performance until you've done this 3 or 4 times. And then you sort of sink into it and something starts to happen. Okay, so let's do it again. All right, Rand, why don't you lead us? It's the first 6 moves.
Okay.
Okay, so if I was just in the audience, so I'm not Rand's teacher, I'm just in the audience of a tournament, and Rand did his piece here. What I would think is this person, and Rand, I don't know whether you think this or not. This is just what I think, right? What I saw is someone practicing balance. His balance seemed to be the most important thing in there, which, you know, for Tai Chi it is. Maybe not the number one, but it's kind of one facet of number one. To me personally, the number one thing about Tai Chi is centering. The second is grounding. The third is balancing. But actually, all three of those are just aspects of the same thing. Centering, grounding, balancing. And what I saw when I watched Rand was someone working on their balance. All right, Susan, let me see you do that first 6 moves.
Okay.
Okay, Susan, that was truly lovely. There were some truly beautiful moments in what you did there. And the word that comes to my mind about it is unhurried. Unhurried. When you're in a hurry, I don't mean you in particular, but when one is in a hurry, you lose part of your mind. Oh, I'm in a hurry, right? There are different ways to do Tai Chi. One very beautiful and I think maybe the most important way is unhurried. Another way of saying that is fully conscious. It takes years to get fully conscious through the whole form. But and part of being fully conscious is to be conscious of when you lose your consciousness. of when you go from being unhurried to being a little hurried. Believe it or not, that takes years of work to become conscious like that. But I want you to think about that classic Chinese poem. The stillness in stillness is not the real stillness. Only when there's stillness in motion will the spiritual rhythm appear which pervades heaven and earth. That's a big poem. Only when there's stillness in motion will the spiritual rhythm appear. The point of the poem is the spiritual rhythm. If you can capture the spiritual rhythm in your body and bring that to your audience, now you've got a real art. Because you're telling them, pay attention to this. There's a spiritual rhythm all around us, heaven and earth. If you pay attention to that and you stay conscious, you can express that in music, you can express that in writing, you can express it in football, and you can express it in Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a really good place to express it. There's nothing wrong with fast Tai Chi. Lots of people do fast Tai Chi and still stay conscious. But there's something mesmerizing about stillness inside Tai Chi. You're moving, you never stop moving. And yet, there's a kind of stillness around you, in you, around you. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I am saying?
I always think of the hurrieder I go, the behinder I get.
that's the truth. And that's absolutely the truth. So what I saw in Susan is someone working on that. One of the things I remember from the introductory painting class in art school was you need quiet space. In every painting, you have to have some quiet space. You have to have a place or places for the viewer's eye to rest. Otherwise, it just becomes noise. There's no structure. There's no structure. There's no rhythm without the quiet in there. Now, a lot of modern art, there is no quiet. It's just noise, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but Susan, you honestly did some of the moves were verging on really truly beautiful. They were really expressing the inner peace.
Well, it's something I have to work on because I tend to be very anxious, and so this is good practice for me.
I know exactly what you mean, right?
Yes.
That's exactly right. That's why one of the reasons why Tai Chi is so good for folks, because it's asking them, it's okay to just slow down. It's okay to seek, even though you're moving, right? To seek that stillness inside and to express that. It's okay. Well, if you're going to do that, you actually have to be there.
Mhm.
You can't express inner peace without having some inner peace. So, anyway, I thought it was really nice.
Thank you.
And I would just, I think everybody needs to do what they're already doing, but just be conscious of it and go, okay, I'm working on, in this particular practice, I'm working on this. Maybe tomorrow I'll work on something different, but be conscious of it and consciously interweave it within your, Tai Chi is not about learning the forms. It's about expressing yourself through the forms. Right? And we've been learning the forms for years and years and years, and we'll continue to learn them for years and years and years, but it's really about expressing yourself through it. Okay, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left. I want to switch gears now and do a little technical work on move number 10 of this form. Let me just do it, and then we'll see what we're gonna in 10 or 15 minutes we can't do too much, but we'll touch on it a little bit. So I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna say there are 10 parts to this. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, most of those, 8 out of 10 of those, are actual martial functions. All right? But 2 of them are resting points. Function, rest. Function, 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 rest, function. All right? So someone else might not call those rest points out, but I'm going to call them out because they're really important. Yes, they're just a split second. They're just a moment. But you bring yourself back to center and grounding and balancing at those points. 1, 2. Now, some people then go straight into it. I think it's a good idea. Personally, I think it's a good idea to rest. And then you just rest. Because you've taken care of this guy. You've given that guy backhand, right? Now you're going to deal with another guy here. But in between, you don't stay all tensed up. No, you just rest. Rest. Now you deal with that guy, and you deal with that guy, and you deal with that guy, and you deal with that guy. And then there's another guy, and there's another guy back there, and you rest, and boom, there's another guy there. I'm sure you've all seen many Hong Kong Kung Fu movies. Have you ever noticed that the hero always fights at least a dozen people? And they're around him in a ring, but they never actually gang up on him. They just all come in one at a time. That's the clever strategy they use, right? Is they come in one at a time. Well, they don't, of course. But in Tai Chi, if you think of it from the martial point of view, you are surrounded by people. You're in a melee, right? So you're dealing with one guy, and now another guy, same guy, same guy, same guy. Oh, another guy, a guy back there, a guy in front. So what? How many was that? 4 or 5 guys. And you need to know that so that you know what direction your mind goes. You don't have to think about it. when you get to this point in the form, you don't have to think about all those fierce martial things. Grandmaster Feng used to say, you've got to learn them and then forget them. You got to learn them so you know what direction you're dealing and what you're doing, and then forget it. The form is not about fighting other people. Even though I talk about fighting other people, that's not what it's about. It's about your internal body. It's about your mind and body. It's about these patterns. Pay attention, pay attention, boom. All right. This is something you can tweak your audience with a little bit. All right? Watch this hand. All right? Pay attention, Kevin. In the 24 form, Master Zhang used to say, don't Fajin that punch. There's two punches like this in the form, one right here and one at the end of the form. This one, you don't I just Fajin it, but don't Fajin. None of that. It's just very gentle. The second one you can Fajin. That's part of that fence post strategy I'm talking about. At the very end of the form, you can put a little pizzazz into it. That pizzazz becomes the kind of ending big fence post. Doesn't have to be a huge thing, but a little something. All right? Boom. Yeah, not crazy, but nevertheless there a little bit, right? Now, we got about 5 minutes left. I want to focus on one little move. Back in the day, Master Zhang described this as a double block down. All right? Let me do it. Right here, double block down. Well, it could be. It could be that. Maybe some guys grabbed you here, right? Double block down, right? But that's not actually what it is. What it actually is it could be that, but I put more weight into it being a china, being a joint lock. But the important thing is for both of them is your weight shift. How is this a china? China, china, china. That's why I've got this outfit on. It's not your hands doing it. It's this. Watch. Now, Susan's knees are going correctly. Watch my knees. They go out. They don't go forward. It's not about forward. When you go forward, it closes your quad. It locks your quad up. You don't want to lock it up. You want to use it. So they go out. Oh, that opens my pelvis. That allows my chi to drop and my weight to drop. And boom, it's my weight that does 90% of the work. It's just like an iceberg. You only see 10% of it is up here, but 90% of it is down here. It's your weight that allows you to do this. So you're doing a chin-up where you're twisting here and you're doing an opposite twist here. Not even grabbing the guy, you just rest your arm on it and twist it this way. Twist, twist. And what causes 90% of the engine of this is this structure down here, your weight. And then maybe 10% with your arms. All right, try this exercise. So simple. Same thing. Now you just, instead of like this, you're standing with 1 foot forward, but it's the same thing. And your hips need to be unlocked and to be open. And to do that, you have to open your knees. So, watch. All right. The basic principles in that little move are in every move. So if you can get this little move correctly, you're going to achieve a lot of what is in the whole rest of the form. In fact, watch the red stripes just doing the other part of this move. It's everywhere. So it's a basic principle. You think, well, it's just such a easy, silly little thing. Well, yeah, in a way it is, but it's actually a big key to doing this. Use your weight. Okay, we're out of time. Practice that over the week. Watch Stevie Ray and watch. It's such a big performance. Right? It's like I've been watching Litz's Hungarian Rhapsody #2 this week. Maybe we'll play that next week. That's also about the same length. And my God, it's you pay attention to the virtuosity of the pianist, and it's easy to miss the overall structure, how he has structured the piece. Maybe we'll watch that next week because it's very, very structured underneath the virtuosity. Kevin, I sent you that version of it where the piano shows up as the little graphics. It's very interesting when you see a graphic version of what the guy is playing. You go, oh, this is all incredibly structured, even though it feels like improvisation.
You can see you can see the mathematics behind the chords and the notes.
Absolutely. And yet when you listen to it, it just sounds like it's flowing, right? If you have a good pianist, anyway. Okay, guys, have yourselves a great day. We'll see you next week. Ciao.
Malcolm.